Assalamu alaikum, Raji Makhfifi from the media unit of the oil ministry. In light of the cooperation between Britain and France supporting the Libyan people and protecting civilians, what is the plan in general in the future? And France and Britain, will they stand with Libya, with the Libyan people at times of peace, just like happened at times of war? Is there any optimism perspective? A question posed, or the question was raised to Mr. Mustafa Abdel Jalil. Thank you very much. The Libyan people and the people of Benghazi won't forget that day when the international community made its decision, its famous decision to impose an air embargo and to take the necessary measures to protect the civilians. France was the first country to make the strikes, to launch the strikes, which prevented a massacre from occurring in Benghazi. And the United Kingdom also played this role. They played very important roles on very different levels. And so these stances will have an effect on the future relations between Libya and France and Libya. And however, until now, no treaties have been signed. We do respect all of the previous contracts and treaties, and we look forward to more growth in the future. Of course, after the war, we have a lot of destruction, and it needs growth on all levels, comprehensive growth, and this growth, of course, our friends will have a very important role in the growth. Those people who have expertise and companies, our friends will have the biggest role in bringing about growth in Libya, whether it be France or any other friends.
Si vous me permettez sur ce sujet, qui est un sujet très important, messieurs.
I would like to comment on that. This is a very important issue.
La Grande-Bretagne, je l'imagine.
France, as you know, France stood side by side with the people, and it was stand side by side with them during the times of peace. But I would like to speak to the Arab public opinion, which is listening now to what is being said. There was no agreement. There were no bilateral agreements when it comes to Libya's riches and resources, and we are not demanding any special treatment from the Libyans. We did what we should have done because we considered that this is part of justice, and because we consider that the world is not in need of a confrontation between East and West. And what is decided by the Libyan government will be good. And if the Libyan government wants to trust our companies, this is something good as well. However, just like what happens in any other country where we have a law, proposals are made and are raised. I think this is the best signal of trust which Libya can show for there to be law. And when it comes to some documents which were published by some media outlets, these are all false documents. They are trying to play around, manipulate the situation. The Prime Minister, Mr. Cameron, and the Libyan Prime Minister, and the head of the Libyan Transitional Council, and all of us, we never discussed these matters which were mentioned in the media. I had to clarify this so that the public opinion in the Arab world would know the truth. The Libyan National Transitional Council led a just revolution, and the alliance committed to believing in the just cause of this revolution and its righteousness. A question now to the French President Nicolas Sarkozy from the French press.
Isabelle Dat, RTL. Monsieur le Président, vous êtes avec votre homologue, les deux premiers dirigeants à venir en
Mr. President,
6 mois presque jour pour jour.
You together with the British Prime Minister are the first leaders to come to Libya after the military strikes. How do you feel? You were subject to a lot of criticism. Do you believe that the strikes of the NATO will continue for a long time? As Mr. Cameron said, the strikes of the NATO will continue as long as the leaders of the Free Libya believe that the Libyans are in danger. Work must be done, and we must end this work. We must do this with patience and determination at the same time. And I would like here to salute the military personnel, the military soldiers of NATO, especially the French and British soldiers, the members of NATO, because our fear was to prevent victims, civilian victims.
de dommages collatéraux.
We didn't want, as they say, we didn't want victims on the sidelines, victims passing away, civilian victims falling. With our helicopters, with our military equipment, we focused very much and we tried to be precise because our main concern was to protect the victims, the civilian women and children, men, women and children. At the same time, Al-Qaddafi and his mercenaries were using the hospitals and the schools, and they were resorting to them and using them as shields. And Mr. Abdel Jalil was right when he said that Al-Qaddafi has money and gold and he still poses a danger and the work has not ended. And my impression is that the criticism which we were subject to, it's very natural in a democratic country for there to be criticism. And when we held this meeting with the intellectuals and with the activists in Paris, there were 21 countries present. And when we held the second meeting, we had 63 countries present. And today in this meeting, we will have more countries present. So let's look forward to the future. And when I was taking a walk in the halls of the hospital, I took a look at the streets of Tripoli. I dreamt of the day coming whereby the Syrian people, the Syrian youth will have the same luck and the same chance which the Libyan youth now are witnessing. I dreamt that the Syrian people would witness a revolution as well. And the least I can do is to look at this visit which we are paying here in Tripoli, to look at it as an example of a new, brighter future for other people, such as the Syrians. Another question now to the British Prime Minister, Mr. David Cameron, from the British press.
Bill Neely from ITV News. Prime Minister, you've just met people who don't yet have the confidence to move their government to Tripoli, who still have to take at least 3 large towns in this country, and who are now asking you for more weapons and more military help. What weapons will you be able to offer them, and are you completely confident that the rebels, that the NTC really does have a grip on this country? And just a second question on Colonel Gaddafi. How confident are you Colonel Gaddafi is still in Libya, and how important is the manhunt for him?
Thank you. Well, on the issue of the National Transitional Council, I've just held a meeting with the National Transitional Council here in Tripoli, and I think people have consistently underrated and underestimated the National Transitional Council. People said they couldn't unite Libya, they were just representing one part of Libya. People said they were tribal, that they were only Islamist. All of this, I think they have consistently proved people wrong. And as I said, I hope they go on proving people wrong by the breadth and generosity of their vision about what a free and democratic Libya will look like. So we will go on supporting the NTC. The biggest thing we can do is to unfreeze the assets that belong to the Libyan people. They have billions of pounds that was often badly taken away from them, that is sitting in foreign bank accounts that should be returned to the Libyan people by the NTC so this country can get back on its feet. In terms of the help that we give militarily, we will go on with the NATO mission for as long as it is necessary under UN Resolution 1973 to protect civilians. And as I said, this work isn't finished yet. There are still parts of it under Gaddafi control. And the message, I think, to Gaddafi and all those still holding arms on his behalf is it is over. Give up. The mercenaries should go home. Those who still think Gaddafi has any part in any part of any part of this country should forget it. He doesn't. It is time for him to give himself up. It is time for the Libyan people to get the justice they deserve by seeing he faces justice. And we will go on helping the National Transitional Council to make sure that happens and that comes about and this country can move on. And it is showing every signs of wanting to move on. And I pay tribute to the work of the NTC, what they have done and what I believe they do. We stand ready to help them. But I would accept, and I think it's important, that the hardest bit of work is probably still to come, of making sure everyone has a future in this country, of getting it back on its feet. These will be difficult times, but so far, what I think we've seen from the National Transitional Council, what we're seeing here is a remarkable and impressive recovery from a very difficult situation. Thank you. I don't know where Mr. Gaddafi or his family is. He was here. All sorts of reports. I think a very clear message is they should all give themselves up and should all face justice for the crimes that they undoubtedly committed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Another question from the Libyan press, it seems. First of all, I would like to thank the French President Sarkozy and British Prime Minister David Cameron for all they have given, all the assistance they provided to the Libyan people so the Libyan people will get freedom. My question is to the chair of the National Transitional Council. When will begin the countdown for the Transitional Council? Because the liberation has occurred, the capital has been liberated, and most of the country has been liberated. The second question, did you request from the international community the names of the people whose assets have been frozen?
Well, we were just listening to the British Prime Minister David Cameron talking there, a little bit of French President Nicolas Sarkozy also in there with his comments. They were the first world leaders to visit Libya since the revolutionaries seized the capital. Let's look at some of the highlights here. There's plenty of them in terms of Cameron saying that Libya has entered a new era, that this was indeed a success in terms of the NTC and the role that they have played in this transitional phase. He made sure that he pointed out, as he has time and again, that this was your revolution, as he said, not our revolution, a point which has been discussed frequently among analysts. There are still pockets of resistance, he said. He also mentioned how there needs to be an effort to take dangerous weapons outside of Libya. Gaddafi is still at large, so there is some work that still needs to be done, including humanitarian efforts, that the UK will make sure that it will provide help in that regards. In terms of the assets that will be released, at this point he said £1 billion has been unfrozen. £12 billion remain, depending on passing the UN resolution tomorrow, in which the outcome of that will may lead to that release. Now, the plan for France and Britain in supporting Libya was one of the questions that was asked, whether now, which is at times of war, it will be the same when there is peace. Mustafa Abdel said France was the first country who launched the strikes, including UK's cooperation, and he mentioned, Mustafa Abdel head of the NTC, no treaties have been signed, but we will honor previous treaties. Now, there's some controversy in here, and that is what the French president pointed out. He said to the Arab public, who is listening to what is being said, he says there has been no bilateral agreements. Now, this most likely is pointing towards these false documents that they say are false that have been presented in the media. A letter and a story that was published by a newspaper magazine saying the NTC had agreed a deal in April to give France priority access to 35% of Libyan oil in exchange for its backing. France has denied it. We have to wait and see whether these are indeed true or not. Also, another point that we talked about, Cameron, when he talked about how NTC leaders believe if Libya is in danger, the NATO airstrikes will continue. He said that an example of a new bright future for, this is actually the French President Nicolas Sarkozy saying, this is an example of a new bright future for other people, including Syrians. The question comes up, doesn't this show the intervention in domestic policies of Syria? Also, we have to mention that when the UK talks about and their support, comes into questions such as the arms fair, 4-day event starting Tuesday. They invited Saudi Arabia, they invited Bahrain to this arms fair. These are regimes that are using weapons against their own people. So that puts a little question there. And Cameron, to round it off, when asked about the NTC and mistrust in the NTC and how to explain this trust, he said the NTC have consistently proved people wrong in that they have said they are for a free and democratic Libya. And we support them in that cause. Military help will come in the form of the NATO mission, UN Resolution 1973. Just some of the highlights, of course.